A few weeks ago, I finally decided to look for a replacement for my old worn-out recliner. It had been in the family for years, a relic from my grandfather's time, but the fabric was threadbare and the springs had long lost their bounce. So, on a dreary Saturday, I found myself at the Comfort Corner, a furniture store on the outskirts of town known for its odd assortment of antiques and modern pieces. The store was dimly lit, with rows of furniture casting long shadows across the floor. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and leather. I wandered through the aisles, feeling an eerie silence that was only broken by the occasional creak of a chair or the soft whisper of fabric. I found myself drawn to a section labeled Unique Finds, where items seemed to have their own stories. It was there that I found it, a recliner that looked almost identical to my grandfather's, but in pristine condition. It was a deep, rich brown, with a plush velvet texture that seemed to invite you to sit. I approached, running my fingers over the armrest, feeling a chill. As I sat down, the chair enveloped me with a comfort I hadn't felt in years. I leaned back, and the recliner responded with a smooth, almost silent glide. But that's when I noticed it. A small, leather-bound journal tucked into the side pocket of the chair. Curiosity piqued, I pulled it out. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but I could still read the entries. The journal belonged to a man named Henry, who had bought this chair in 1934. His entries started normal, talking about his daily life, his wife, and his job at the local mill. But as I flipped through, the tone changed. Henry began to write about strange occurrences. He'd mentioned hearing whispers when he was alone, feeling cold spots in the room, and seeing shadows when no one else was there. One entry, dated October 13th, 1935, was downright chilling. I've started to see her. She stands by the window, always looking out, never turning. Her dress is from another time, and she seems so sad. I've tried to speak to her, but she vanishes when I approach. The chair, it's like it's alive, whispering to me, telling me stories of loss. I closed the journal, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. The store felt even colder now, the silence oppressive. Eventually I stood up, intending to leave, but as I turned, I saw her. I can only imagine this was the woman Henry had described. She was by the window, her back to me, her dress old-fashioned, her figure translucent. I blinked, and she was gone, but the chill remained, and the chair seemed to beckon me back. I took a step towards it, then another, feeling an inexplicable pull. Just as I was to sit again, a voice from behind startled me. "Beautiful piece, isn't it?" The storekeeper, an old man with eyes that seemed too knowing, stood there. "That chair has a history. Some say it's haunted, but I think it's just lonely." In the end, I couldn't bring myself to buy it. I left the comfort center that day, but the memory of that chair and journal haunted me. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear the creak of a recliner and the soft whisper of a woman's voice telling tales of sorrow and loss. My wife and I went furniture shopping around the time we moved into our new house 3 years ago. We were looking for something to fill the spacious living room, which felt too empty and too echoey. We ended up at a store called Furniture Haven, and it was a quaint little thing on the edge of town, known for its eclectic mix of new and vintage pieces. The store was oddly quiet for a Saturday afternoon, with only the faint hum of an old ceiling fan breaking the silence. The air was musty, carrying the scent of aged wood and fabric. As we browsed, I noticed a peculiar section labeled the Curated Collection, where furniture seemed to have a story of its own. We were drawn to a beautiful, ornate mirror framed in dark, carved wood. It was unlike anything we'd seen before, with intricate designs that seemed to tell tales of bygone eras. My wife, always the one for antiques, was immediately taken by it. "Look at this craftsmanship," she said, her fingers tracing the carvings. "It's like it's from another time." I agreed, but there was something about the mirror that made me uneasy. Its surface was unusually clean, almost too reflective, as if it could capture more than just our images. We decided to buy it, despite the slight discomfort I felt. The mirror was delivered the next day, and we hung it in the living room where it caught the light beautifully. But that night, things changed. I woke up to the sound of whispers, soft but distinct, coming from downstairs. At first I thought I was dreaming, but the whispers persisted. I crept down, the cold of the wooden floor seeping into my bare feet. The living room was dark, save for the moonlight that bathed the mirror in an eerie glow. As I approached, the whispers grew louder and more urgent. I could almost make out words, but not quite. The next morning I mentioned it to my wife. She laughed it off, attributing it to the stress of moving. But over the next few days, the whispers became a nightly occurrence. They were always there, but just beyond my understanding. It was like a conversation in a language I couldn't comprehend. Finally, one night, I decided to confront it. I sat in front of the mirror, staring into my own eyes, the whispers now a constant murmur. And that's when I saw it. A flicker, a shadow, but it wasn't mine. It was a figure, old-fashioned, with eyes that seemed to look right through me. The figure moved, and for a moment, I saw a room. But it wasn't my living room. It was one from another time. There were also people in it, in period dress, just living their lives. After a few moments, the vision faded, leaving me with a chill. I couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror was a window to something else, somewhere else. At first I tried to hide what I discovered, but my wife noticed the change in me. Specifically, she noticed the sleepless nights and the way I avoided the living room. Finally, I told her everything. She listened, her face pale, and then suggested we return the mirror calmly. We took it back to Furniture Haven, where the owner, an elderly woman with a knowing look, simply nodded when we explained. "It's not just furniture, you know," she said as we left. "Some pieces carry more than just their weight." Needless to say, we never bought anything from there again, but sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear the whispers, and I wonder if the mirror was just the beginning. Or has our house always been listening? Before I randomly came across it on the side of a road, I would never in a million years have guessed that someone would make an Elon Musk-themed furniture store. Yet there it was, tucked away in a small town, not far from where I was visiting family, and curiosity got the better of me. The store was called Musk Manor, with a neon sign of a rocket ship and the Tesla logo flickering in the twilight. Inside, everything was themed around Musk's ventures: SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, and even the Boring Company. There were rocket-shaped lamps, chairs designed to look like the interior of a Tesla, and even a bed that resembled a SpaceX capsule. I was browsing through the Starlink sofa section when I noticed an odd piece, a chair that looked like it was straight out of a futuristic sci-fi movie. It was sleek, black, with a minimalist design, and it had a plaque that read, "The Musk Mastermind." Intrigued, I sat down. The chair was incredibly comfortable, almost too much so. It seemed to mold itself to my body, and I felt a strange sensation, like a mild electric current running through me. That's when I noticed a small, almost hidden button on the armrest. I pressed it, and the chair began to hum softly. Suddenly, the room around me changed. The walls of the store faded, replaced by a vast, star-filled space. I was in a simulation, or so I thought, with planets and stars swirling around me. It was honestly breathtaking, but then the scene shifted to a dark, claustrophobic tunnel reminiscent of the Boring Company's projects. The feeling of being underground, the weight of the earth above, was overwhelming. Just as I was about to panic, the scene changed again. I was now in a room with screens showing live feeds from SpaceX launches, the roar of rockets filling the air. But then the screens flickered, and instead of rockets, I saw figures, shadowy and indistinct, moving in the background. They seemed to be working, but their movements were too fast, too unnatural. Then the simulation ended abruptly, and I was back in the store, my heart pounding. I stood up, feeling dizzy, and that's when I saw him. A man who looked strikingly like Elon Musk, but with an eerie, almost robotic quality to his movements. "Enjoying the experience?" he asked, his voice too perfect, too synthetic. I nodded, unable to speak, and quickly made my way to the exit. As I left, I glanced back. The man was still there, watching me, his eyes glowing slightly in the dim light of the store. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My dreams were filled with stars, tunnels, and those shadowy figures. When I woke, I found a small, sleek device on my nightstand, something I had never seen before. It was a miniature version of the button from the chair. I've kept it, though I'm too afraid to press it. Sometimes, I wonder if what I experienced was just an elaborate marketing gimmick, or if I tapped into something more. Something that Elon Musk, or whatever was impersonating him, didn't want me to see. When my two sons were around 7 and 5, they started getting really excited about the prospect of a bunk bed for some reason. My wife and I decided to visit the furniture store at our local mall to have them help pick it out, with the understanding that we couldn't get something too expensive. Little did we know, that decision will lead us into a nightmarish tale. The store was like any other, or so it seemed. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting an eerie glow on the polished wood and plush cushions. The air was thick with a scent of varnish and something else, something musty, like old secrets. We wandered through aisles of sofas and tables, my boys darting ahead, their eyes wide with the wonder of childhood. Then we found it, a corner dedicated to children's furniture. There, standing like a sentinel, was the bunk bed. But it wasn't just any bunk bed. It had a design that seemed almost too perfect, with intricate carvings of what looked like faces? "Isn't it beautiful?" whispered a voice behind us. We turned to see an old man, his eyes twinkling with a knowledge that seemed out of place. "This bed has a history," he continued, almost too eager to share. "Crafted from the wood of the oldest tree in the forest, where spirits are said to linger." My wife, ever the skeptic, laughed it off, but I felt a chill. The boys, however, were completely sold. We checked the price, and surprisingly, it was within our budget. It was a deal too good to pass up, or so we thought. That night, after setting up the bed, the house felt different. Maybe colder? The first night was uneventful, but then the whispers started. Not the kind you'd hear in a crowded room, but soft, almost inaudible, like the rustle of leaves in a forgotten forest. My youngest son, Timmy, began to sleepwalk, mumbling about the man in my bed. At first, my wife and I dismissed it as an overactive imagination, but then one morning, everything changed. I found him standing by the bed, his eyes wide open but not seeing. "He's here," he whispered. "He wants to play." The next night, the whispers grew louder. I couldn't sleep, and when I did, I dreamt of the old man from the store. His voice mingling with the whispers, telling tales of children who never woke up, their dreams becoming their eternal playground. Then the bed started to change. The carvings seemed to move, the faces contorting into expressions of horror. My wife, who had always been the voice of reason, now heard the whispers too. "We need to get rid of it," she said, her voice trembling. We tried to dismantle it, but the screws wouldn't budge, as if the bed itself was resisting. Desperate, we called the store, but the number was disconnected. A visit revealed the store was gone, replaced by an empty lot, as if it had never existed. In the end, we did what any rational person would do in a horror story. We burned it. The fire was too eager, the flames dancing with joy, or perhaps relief. The whispers did stop, but the house never felt the same. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the trees, I swear I hear laughter, the kind that children make when they're playing a game that only they understand. A game with rules that we're not privy to, in a world just beyond the veil of our reality. That bunk bed, it was more than just furniture. It was a portal, a gateway to something we can't explain. It was also a reminder that sometimes the scariest things are those we invite into our own homes, not knowing they've been waiting for us all along.